Hi, folks. We're doing our next video, True Piety by John Calvin. And the article is here. You can get it by Ford Lewis Battles on thehighway.com. Ford Lewis Battles, The Piety of John Calvin. Piety defined in word and act. Piety defined by Calvin in his first catechism, published in French in 1537 and in Latin in 1538. John Calvin defined the untranslatable word pietas, which for him was the shorthand symbol for his whole understanding and practice of the Christian faith and life. Calvin says true piety does not consist in a fear which willingly indeed flees God's judgment, but since it cannot escape is terrified. True piety consists rather in a sincere feeling which loves God as Father as much as it fears and reveres him as Lord, embraces his righteousness, dreads offending him worse than death, and whoever have been endowed with this piety dare not fashion out of their own rashness any God for themselves. Rather, they seek from him the knowledge of the true God and conceive him just as he shows and declares himself to be. Calvin more succinctly defines pietas in the Institutes as that reverence joined with the love of God, which the knowledge of his benefits induces. Calvin more succinctly defines pietas in the Institutes as the reverence joined with the love of God, which the knowledge of his benefits induces. Besides pietas, he set religio, faith so joined with an earnest fear of God, that this fear also embraces willing reverence and carries with it such legitimate worship as prescribed in the law. Note that in these definitions of pietas and religio, a number of other basic terms are interlaced: faith, fear, reverence, love, and knowledge. To grasp the full aptitude of pietas, let us examine a few of the many references to the word scattered throughout his commentaries and other writings. In the commentary on the Psalms 119, verse 78, he taught the true nature of pietas is seen in the two marks of believers: honor, the obedience rendered to him as Father; fear, the service done him as Lord. Distinct from this is the unbeliever's fear, which rests not upon faith, fides, but upon unfaith, defensia. Knowledge also enters largely into the concept of pietas. In the commentary of Jeremiah 10:25, Calvin spoke of the knowledge of God, cognito Deo, as the beginning of pietas. Calling upon God's name, invoctio, in the fruit of the knowledge of God is evidence of pietas. In the Institutes, Calvin spoke of the first step towards pietas as to know that God is Father to us. Elsewhere he asserts that there is no pietas without true instruction, as the name disciple indicates. True religion and worship of God, he said, arise out of faith, so that no one duly serves God save him who has been educated in his school. Calvin also related piety and love, caritas, Paracletons in Ezekiel 18:5. He spoke of pietas, the root of caritas, piety and love. Pietas means the fear or reverence of God, but we also fear God when we live justly among our brethren. This relationship between our reverential attitude towards God and our attitude towards neighbor is further developed in his sermon on Deuteronomy 5:16. And this is why the heathen have applied this word pietas. To honor we render to father, mother, and all those in authority over us. Piety, properly speaking, is the reverence we owe to God. But the pagans, although they were poor, blind folk, recognized that God not only wills to be served in his majesty, but when we obey the persons who rule over us in some. He wills to prove our obedience at this point, and thus, inasmuch as fathers and mothers and magistrates and all those who have authority are lieutenants of God and represent his person, it is certain that if one shows them a contempt and reject them, that it is like declaring that one does not want to obey God at all. Yet Calvin places pietas higher than caritas. For God towers over men. Still, believers seriously testify by honoring mutual righteousness among themselves that they honor God. So that is a little bit about piety by John Calvin, and you can look up that article. I'm going to have to go and check the dog because the dog's barking. It might be someone coming. So check out the article, The Piety of John Calvin by Ford Lewis Battles. It will edify you and encourage you. God bless you.